So I'm joining you from Toronto, from the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Yeah, that was a great talk. And I'm currently reading Native Science by Kahete along my journey to support decolonization. And along with that, I would like to invite, if anyone would like to turn on their camera. I realize, there may be reasons why not to, and join a conversation. I would like to try facilitating this more relationally, right? Based more off of your inputs and feedback and curiosities. So yes, I'm currently a professor at Minerva University, which is a US-based university and has been rated the most innovative university in the world for 3 years in a row now. Yeah, which I love. I love innovation. And so yes, thank you to Eliana and Deb for bringing together these all these fellow innovators of teaching and learning here. And today I wanted to share an innovation that I implemented in a 500 student introductory physics course. And this was at the University of Toronto because Minerva does not have, it was for large courses. Right? We've done lots of fun things including open-ended creative projects and smaller courses. But in large courses, I have not managed to do that. I had a dream. I wanted to do project-based assessments in my 500 student class, but then COVID hit and the dean's office was like, no, we can't support you on that, which is understandable. So to share a little bit about my course, maybe I will get some visuals here. There we go. Is that working?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this is my large class. And as you might imagine, I have high-level learning goals. So these are some of our general learning goals, which include this idea of connecting physics to the outside world to be able to really reason. I care less about, when I first started teaching, I cared about content, but as I've progressed in my teaching journey, I went to concepts, and now it's really more these habits of mind, the ability to connect physics with their lives and be able to propose creative ideas and to test those ideas and the scientific journey here. And the approach that I used to do this, so this is the engagement part, it's called the investigative science learning environment. I'll put some references in the chat here for those who are interested in learning more. And so this is to try to engage. So we have two key intentionalities: to engage students in learning physics through the practices of physics. So not just learning the concepts or the results of physics, but actually engage them in the process of discovery. And also that the way students learn physics should ideally enhance their well-being. And I very much struggled to do this at scale. So based on your experiences, either in physics classes or from your colleagues' physics classes or science classes, how are assessments typically done in these courses? Large introductory science courses.
Teach and test.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I don't think I could invite, like, what are the issues with this? I think we're all here because we understand the issues with this. Yeah, our assessments should be about learning. And yet I had this challenge of like, how do we do this in a large class? And so so I had used, I kind of call it, baby innovation of two-stage tests when we were in person, in terms of, so it was still with the multiple choice portion of the test, there was still a multiple choice portion, right? You try to make it high-level questions, but then they would, after they complete the multiple choice portion, then they get to they turn in their Scantron sheet. I know I hate that we have to use Scantron sheets, but they turn it in, and then they would get a new Scantron sheet, and they could answer the same questions but have the option of talking with anyone in the room. So it's have a collaborative portion, and then you do a weighted average of those two grades as kind of like a two-stage. So that way, at least they get to learn during the assessment, right? Assessment should be learning. But then what do we do when we go to the pandemic, right? So now I've got 500 students online. And so we want to try, so yeah, so how might we do this? How could we do this? What features would you want in an online assessment for 500 students? And now we're in COVID. What might you want this to look like?
Maybe to make sure they were out there, that they were somehow connected to what you were teaching and what they were learning, that in some way figure out how to know, when you shout down the tunnel that they're at the other end.
Yeah. So during class, yes, absolutely. So during, in terms of within class, I did struggle to do this because I know learning assistants or teaching assistants during class, but yes, we did try to, we did these team up exercises, which was created by a colleague in biology, this team up where they could, where they would go into breakout rooms and work together in groups on exercises and then submit their answer together and get participation credits for it. But what about the things we place? What about these tests? What can we do with these tests? What can we do with these tests? And so, so we still needed, colleagues were obviously concerned about this academic integrity issue, right? We want to keep, students are stressed, so we want to keep academic integrity. So I kept my colleagues' suggestion of online time closed response quizzes. So it was all automatically graded because again, we have 500 students and the TAs are all busy in the labs, right? We can't do, the TAs we have very limited TA support for exams. Like they can do a question, but I reallocated those TAs to provide support to students in office hours. So yeah, exactly. It's like how much support we have, and we did not have a lot of support. I'm seeing in the chat. So I did do a two-stage exam format, but did it in a flipped way, and this is based on a colleague, Chris Myers, who teaches in the high school context, introductory physics in the high school context. And what he'll do is he'll give students a context. For example, in mechanics, he might give them like a roller coaster or something, right? And just give them the diagrams and the whole situation, the setup, without any actual questions, and let students in groups talk and discuss and write down remind themselves of the mathematical representations they need and all of this. And so discuss the context together. Then they all go to their individual desk and then they get the actual questions. And it just helps, again, alleviate that stress, allows them to be collaborative and discuss together. And if they really have no idea what's going on, the collaborative part doesn't really help them, right? They can try to like take down the notes, but then can they actually apply it to the actual test? And so I tried to do this in this online context where I provided a context in advance and the student and encourage them to collaboratively discuss this context, and said then this quiz will just be 6 questions, based on this context. And I further tried to embed growth mindset by having a quiz A and a quiz B for each module. And if they did better on quiz B than quiz B would replace the quiz A score. And we could, because this was all automatically assessed, we could provide very, very timely feedback on this. And so yeah, and I can share, this is where my quizzes are if you want to know more about them. And I will share a little bit here too. So yeah, so this is the website here, and I think it switches tabs when I switch tabs, right? Just to confirm. Are you seeing
Yes,
my
yes.
website now? Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
good. Yep, so this is just saying what I just said. And so this is an example. I chose this one because it seemed it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Scream painting, and we're right after Halloween. But yeah, so this is an example of a context in our optics unit. And so they would be given this context in advance, right? So this photo students would be given in advance. In fact, we can go down and show it here. So the students were given this photo and they were said, hey, this is what's going on. A physics student is doing this, and hey, look, there are 3 images of the student in the photo. And so then they were invited to analyze this collaboratively, discuss it with each other, etc. And then this is the actual quiz. And so I'm labeling these images. Of course, I had different versions, so they were labeled differently for different, for different students. And then these are the kinds of questions. So, so again, they're not just factual. They are, like what are you doing? And you could get partial credit for partially correct answers.
So Carolyn, people can't access the quizzes. Should they be
The link
able to
doesn't work?
when they went to the link, but they can see on your screen, the examples that you're sharing, but should they be able to access the quizzes if they went to that link?
Yes, if they sign up for the Canvas, it doesn't.
It
Oh,
says that
weird.
the site's under construction. Yeah, maybe we can look into that afterwards.
Here, maybe I'll put this link in. I mean, that's the direct link, but the other one should work. Is that working? Okay. I don't know what happened. Something happened with the other one, I guess. I don't know what happened. I tested it before, but anyway. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for letting me know. So yeah, and again, folks can look at these later, but this is just an idea of like, I was trying to get at these applying it to the real world context. And part of the investigative science learning environment approach is interrogating the textbook. So students, as they're reading or as they're listening in class, are asking themselves, hey, how does this work? How does this make sense? Why do I know this? So not just what the results are, but how do I know this? And the hope here was for them to interrogate this image, right? So to be able to look at what am I seeing? What are the images? Why do they look that way? How can I apply the various representations and concepts from this unit to analyze this question? And then it was completely open book, of course. They were doing this online at home, and then applying it to this. Yeah, so what do you think? Any thoughts on what the results might be here? Oh, really? It's still not working? No, Adil said it works. Okay.
Results in what way?
Or what are you curious about? What are you curious about from from this attempt?
I'm not sure we know what you're asking, Carolyn. The results of the students, do you mean? Is that what you're asking us?
Yes, basically, what would you like? Is there anything you would like to see more, or should we close? I mean, I can end if there's Why is it timed? Excellent. We were concerned about we were concerned again about academic integrity, and so yeah, basically, if we have a lot of time, then students will be incentivized to talk to each other. So the timing was the timedness of it was to prevent students from just like sharing answers because it's closed response. However, they were allowed to discuss beforehand, right? So there's this collaborative piece where they can discuss the concepts beforehand, but then still this part is, can they actually apply them in real time? Can they apply? So they could draw their array diagrams, right, together collaboratively, but then can they interpret their array diagrams in the context of these specific questions, for example? Yeah, I'm curious about the difference between them working together at first and then separately versus doing it separately then together. Yeah, it's yeah, I like them both for different reasons. In this particular case, there was just no way for them to do it. It was it was just feasibility. It was like, how do I do that after, again, without them just copying from each other? There's in person, I can have them, here's a new thing, and now just talk to each other. So for this, so the question is, are they graded on the collaborative? They're just graded on the individual part because the collaborative part is on their own, right? It's a huge class, so they can submit their notes. I did eventually have them submit their notes optionally. They optionally could submit their notes, and this was just in case there was in case a student had an issue. And yeah, part of the stress of this was there were technical issues, or if a student is like, oh, I totally had this answer was on my notes and I clicked the wrong thing because I was stressed. If they submitted their notes beforehand, I realized I could go back and fix it for them. Yeah, I would be very interested in studying that question. That'd be a great question in terms of student learning. Does it have a big difference? I think from Chris Meyer's experience, the context discussions are very, very rich, right? And when you can do them, if you're in a small class, this is a large class. And so students to be able to really have the discussion of the context and the concepts can be really nice and helps calm their nerves because they're not going in alone. They have their notes from their peers, and then but they still need to understand everything to be able to apply it to the actual specific question. I did not give them the questions beforehand. I gave them only the context.
Okay.
And they
saw the context together.
Mm-hmm.
Was that timed, or was that just like
no? And that was one of the issues. Yeah, it was 2 days in advance. Right, they were given it 2 days in advance. So anytime, wherever they were in the world, right, because this was COVID, they could meet up with each other and discuss the context.
Okay, and then they had to attend the quiz part, and then it's
timed. The quiz was synchronous during class, exactly.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Exactly. So they were expected to be available during class. So the quiz was this timed thing during class time. But part of the challenge was because we did not have adequate scaffolding because the students are so accustomed to memorization approaches to learning. A lot of students spent way too much time on little details in analyzing the contexts and less on actually interrogating conceptually, right, applying the concept. So they generally, what seemed to be happening was they would get together, a lot of them would like get together and like just kind of like brainstorm questions that I might ask and then memorize the answers to those questions, which is not helpful unless I happen to ask that exact question, right? Versus actually getting together and discuss conceptually what is going on here, what is generating the images, what are the diagrams, right? And so providing scaffolding over time. And this is what was kind of disappointing was, the question is, did they actually get better? And I mean, so this, I think I showed you this one, right? This was the test. And then, so this is kind of our results for module 1, right? Quiz A, quiz B. The top one being A, the bottom one being B. Again, these are 2 weeks apart, but the same learning goals. So you can see that they really struggled on this. There was no evidence, the good news, no evidence of cheating that was successful anyway. But over time, it's not like they necessarily improved all that much, right? Like there were different levels of difficulty of the quizzes, but they did consistently do a little bit better on quiz B, but students felt very frustrated for sure in terms of And this is the feedback just on the tests, right? And this is how much do you feel that these components, this is the student assessment of their learning gains instrument, which I absolutely love. Sadly, it looks like it's down now. Otherwise, I'd share that link too. And this is how much did each of these help your learning, right? How much did these how much did these contribute to your learning gains? And so yeah, a lot of there are some students who said, oh, this really helped, but very few. And I tend to gauge my success on like the middle 50%. And so in this case, it did not work with the amount of scaffolding that we had. So so it did not adequately relieve the issues with closed response tests. Even doing this two-stage test and doing an A/B format, so you had this opportunity to succeed, to improve upon your previous one. That did help a little bit, but not enough. Students still felt like it was too much of a stretch for them. And so this might be better as a formative assessment tool, unless you have more scaffolding, more resources, right, for students to really develop their critical thinking and interrogation skills.
In terms of
Of course, I explained. So there's a question in terms of, have you explained to students what they should do when they get together? Well, I haven't offered this course again since, right? I'm at a completely different institution. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that I would have changed if I taught this course again. In terms, in this iteration, I knew I needed to explain it, right? And I explained it a lot, but as we know, explaining at students doesn't help them get it, right? Like, so they really need practice, right? They need deliberate practice, right? They need guided practice. And while I tried to do that I'm on Zoom they're all on Zoom in basically their high school bedrooms, and it's like, I tried to do that within that, but I couldn't. I didn't have a way without, a small army of learning assistants or something. I didn't know how to do that, right? How to give them that adequate, deliberate practice. Were there students who were unable to connect with someone else for the discussion? That is a good question. I'd have to, I don't know if I even have the data to look for that. We did certainly provide lots of opportunities for them to connect with each other. I should say they did collaborative labs. I insisted that they're going to do collaborative labs. Many students said it was the only class where they actually knew some of their classmates, because this was pandemic and Zoom. But they all had at least lab group mates and a smaller lab practical section, which was 18 students, and their lab mates, which would be, 2 to 3 other students. And that was all done on this platform on Teams. So they had their Teams chat. So they certainly could have, reached out to their lab mates, which they have to talk to anyway, and collaborate with them. But yes, we also tried to provide lots of other opportunities. We had Piazza, we had Perusal. So we tried to give lots of opportunities and encouragement for students to collaborate with each other and work with each other.
Thanks so much, Carolyn. That was really,
absolutely.
I think really, first, thank you for, your refreshing, reflective honesty about what you did and what you try. And that's so great. But I love this idea of how context is never a peripheral issue in education, never, is it? And your use of the word interrogate the image. It just feels like that's a really interesting skill to teach students across a lot of subject areas. When we do alternative assessment tasks, what does that really mean? And how can we figure out good ways to model that, or watch students doing it and somehow videotape them and say, what worked well, and where, the teaching inside of that, I think there's such great potential. And so for sharing all of that, thank you so much. Very worthwhile.
Thank you all. And can I just plug an invitation quickly?
Yes.
An amazing, interactive, very innovative conference is coming up in July 2025. I just threw it in the chat, Cultivating Ensembles. Very interactive, participant-centered, our call for proposals is open, and innovative assessment is welcome.
Very
And
cool.
thank you all.